is that time of the year. The rains are here, a natural blessing to the environment, providing greenery and cool climate that is soothing to the skin. The rainy season, also known as the monsoon season, is a favorite season for a lot of people. For others, it is their downtime, particularly for those with cold allergies and other underlying health conditions. Sweet as the season can be, it comes with a host of infectious diseases, notably a respiratory-related ailment such as cold and flu. The wet ambience it comes with also, if not properly handled, can create dampness and muddy environment that can lead to waterborne diseases like cholera, among others, especially among those with low immune system. This episode of Health Options promises to keep you abreast of some of the ailments that comes with the rainy season and prevention. As usual, we have something for you on Nature's Corner. Thanks for keeping a date with us. I am Salwa Khalil Ibrahim. When the rains pour, everyone wants to stay dry and keep warm, mostly as protection from cold-related allergies or associated infections. So, what are these ailments and how best can one stay afloat during the rainy season? We have a specialist in the house who will be answering these questions and guide us on healthy lifestyle for this season. Stay tuned. I'm now joined by Dr. Agbo Ebuta, a consultant and family physician. Thanks for coming on Health Options, Doctor.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, now, medically, is the rainy season peculiar with ailments and diseases?
Yes, definitely. The rainy season is associated with a higher flow of water levels, and to a large extent, this has implication for the public health and the population health, and so it's important to beam our searchlight into that. And by way of looking at it critically, during the rainy season, you have an upsurge of what you call waterborne diseases. You also have an upsurge of water-associated vector-borne diseases, and I'll break it down. For waterborne diseases, for example, is mainly infections that are typically fecal-oral, meaning that they are associated with the indiscriminate public defecation and contamination of drinking water and food, which leads to symptoms like vomiting, abdominal pain, cramps, as the case may be, and diarrhea, most especially, which can be life-threatening. In fact, it is no surprise that conditions like cholera, salmonellosis, which is also nicknamed and popularly called typhoid, Campylobacter infections, and other gastrointestinal infections, that is, infections that infect the intestines of the patient and give symptoms associated with that, like I pointed out earlier, vomiting and diarrhea, which can be life-threatening. So this happens mainly because water source is contaminated, and it's typical because during the rainy season, for example, high flow of water means that all those barriers that we have set up to protect the collection point of feces, for example, is broken down. And where you have mini floods and all of that, these mini floods will carry feces from where they are supposed, where it was artificially constructed to be like a repository, to areas where they contaminate vegetables, they contaminate surface water, and our dear people, 230 million Nigerians in search of water, may now go and get water from some of those sources and become infected.
But I know most commonly people will associate the weather with cold and flu. When people have catarrh, cough, sometimes people say, is that time of the season again, So is that also peculiar to the or raining season?
Yeah, indeed. During the rainy seasons, the temperature are much colder. And because temperatures are much colder, the natural UV light sterilization of bacteria and viruses especially is not as much. So when you have the sun out there, the sun, apart from whatever it does for all the things it does for us rather, it also serves as a sterilizer to many microorganisms that we may not even see. So during the cold weather and you don't have high temperatures, most times the temperatures are cool and you don't have as much sun as you typically will have, that natural UV light sterilization is reduced. So it means that viral loads on hands and for transmission in the public space is much, much higher. Apart from that, it's also clear and is known that cases of influenza, upper respiratory tract infection are typically higher, especially in climates like ours, the tropics, where you have seasons divided into dry and rainy season. And we do know that the rainy season is typically between March or May to as far as October and towards November, as the case may be. So yes, indeed, upper respiratory tract infection, principally as a result of viral contamination or viral contact with viral infections like parainfluenza virus, influenza virus, ecovirus, coronavirus, and a lot of other viruses are responsible for an upsurge of upper respiratory tract infection during that period.
Now, as a specialist now, I would like to ask, do we see more often outbreaks of diseases during the raining season as compared to when the weather is dry?
Well, not necessarily. You do have two classes of diseases, generally speaking. So you do have a first class, which is called non-communicable diseases. And I'll just mention it just to do away with it. Non-communicable diseases are hypertension, diabetes. These are diseases that cannot be transmitted. They are usually lifestyle-related diseases due to sedentariness, excess salt intake, inherited predispositions, and the rest. So these diseases will not vary during a change of season. However, the other class, which is communicable diseases, some patterns, some classes, some subgroups of communicable diseases, as we are discussing, are higher during the rainy season than in the dry season, mainly because the enabling environmental factors are in place. So you can see that during the rainy season, for example, because of more sources of breeding sites, mosquitoes can multiply.
Is that to say more malaria?
Absolutely. So malaria cases are usually higher because the vectors of that parasite of that is also high. The protozoa, the vector of the protozoa is high. And apart from malaria, other low-grade infections that are transmitted by mosquitoes are also experiencing a spike. Things like dengue fever, things like yellow fever. These are other conditions that are transmitted by malaria, by mosquito rather, and they are also a spike. In fact, we know, for example, that malaria prevalence can increase by as much as 50% during the rainy season.
Wow.
In the FCT, we have a prevalence based on estimate that about 22.5% of the FCC population averagely would have malaria. We know that this number goes up a little more during the rainy season because we have more mosquitoes flying around, and the more mosquitoes you have, the more people are bitten, the more transmission.
But I want you to re-emphasize now with those with underlying conditions, for example, those with sickle cell anemia, or those with other underlying ailments.
Yes.
Do they see more crisis? Asthmatic patients?
Yes, indeed. The sickle cell anemic patient have a higher degree of cases. Now, I can explain that very clearly because there are several factors at play. Number one of the key causes of increased crisis in sickle cell anemic patients is increased malaria prevalence. So we have already discussed that. Malaria prevalence goes up, chances of crisis goes up. But number two is that during the rainy season, the whole temperature, atmospheric temperature, environmental temperature are much lower. And low temperature in sickle cell anemic patient is not the best. It increases the chance that the sickle cell, the cell, which will be pre-sickled, it will now sickle. And you know, when these red cells become sickle, what happens is that they lose their flexibility, clog up tiny little vessels where blood should flow, and creates problem, which is basically the bone crisis. So yes, indeed. And the other hand, of course, asthma cases typically are also high because during the season, the rainy season, for example, cases of upper respiratory tract infections are higher. So once you have an adjustment in the natural protective mechanism in the upper respiratory tract, the chances that the patient will have recurrent episodes of respiratory compromise, like asthma, exacerbation of what we call chronic obstructive airway disease. So usually during the period, patients who have an adjusted, downwardly calibrated immunity of their respiratory system have a higher chance of having those reoccurrence.
Okay, many thanks, Dr. Agbo. Now, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the management and how to keep afloat during the weather. Stay with us.
Kuka that's the name in Hausa.
That is call it Ose.
In Yoruba.
Ose, Igi Ose.
Okay, so I know it's Kuka.
I am delighted to have you join us on Health Options, the program that not only tracks government policies on health.
The total cholesterol is made up of some components. The high density lipoprotein, which is the good cholesterol, the low density hypoprotein, which is the bad.
Cervical cancer, a type of cancer that develops in a woman's cervix.
There were opportunities for women to get screened for both cervical and breast cancer, maybe up to 30,000, but we'll be having figures of 5,000.
If you just joined us, the program is Health Options on the NTA, and we've been talking about ailments associated with the rainy season. And my guest is a consultant family physician, Dr. Agbo Ebuta. Many thanks for being there, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we've spoken a lot about the ailment associated with the raining season, you know, malaria, those with underlying ailment. Now, what are those major tips now you can say one can do to at least avoid being infected, or those are infected, you know, to manage themselves?
To reduce respiratory infection, we can just cast our minds back to what we had to put in place when we had the COVID pandemic. So what do? You wash your hands. You avoid using your hands to touch your face. You sanitize your hands whenever you come in contact or you're in a public place, and you avoid crowded places, especially when you suspect that other people there may have respiratory tract infections. If you have a downgraded or a immune system when it comes to the respiratory system, you need to know that you need to present early when you notice any symptoms, so that you can nip in the bud any far-reaching or high implication compromise of the respiratory system. That's on one side. On the other side, obviously, for things like malaria and vector-borne diseases, which are generally higher, it's very important to put in place measures that control malaria breeding around your environment, cutting grasses, making sure there is no puddle of water, open containers where malaria or mosquitoes rather can breed. And of course, netting your house will reduce mosquito transmission by as much as 54% range based on study findings. In addition to that, of course, in patients who have sickle cell anemia, as we pointed out earlier, it's important that they take their malaria preventive medication, which has been shown to reduce malaria transmission or malaria events and need for presentation in hospital by as much as 40 to 60%. So these are all critical. Again, for food and waterborne diseases, food hygiene is critical and important. Starting from, you can't go about buying fruits from from people who may not be licensed or may not have, you may not think they have the without knowledge and capacity to produce and provide safe sources of fruit. That is one. But even if you decide to buy fruits from the public place, it's important that you wash them up properly before eating them. Wash them up before bringing them into your house. And then when it comes to water, you must be vigilant. Drinking water is a major contributing factor to gastrointestinal infections like cholera, typhoid, campylobacter, and a lot of others. So you must ensure that your source of water is safe. Boil water where necessary, filter it, cool, and drink. In fact, when you boil water, you have eliminated all possibilities of bacterial infections which are responsible for most diarrhea. Cholera cannot exist in boiled water to a large extent. So that should be put in place.
There is a general argument that cold and catarrh is not really associated with the raining season. Now, I want you to clarify that. And is it contagious?
Well, cold and catarrh is a general term for symptoms associated with sneezing, nasal discharge, and maybe cough. Now, some of these symptoms may not be infective. However, for the ones that are infective, that is due to an infection from contact with a possible source, it is typically as a result of viral infection. And most studies have come to a conclusion that during the cold weather, this risk is higher. And of course, we know, for example, that there are several factors that are at play. It's not necessarily that, okay, during the rainy season or cold weather, it must go up. But there are factors that are in place that have increased the prevalence of this condition. And like I pointed out earlier, to a large extent, the chances of transmissions are higher in cold weather. The chances of viral death for viral atmospheric sterilization are actually less in cold weather. The chances that people crowd together are higher in cold weather. And all of these factors come into play when you talk of transmission from the public health point of view.
Okay, now on a final note now, how can one, protect oneself from the weather? I know the weather these days is unpredictable now, and then sometimes one cannot help it being cold, and so when you're always out and about. Now, what do you do in that case? Well, from the health point of view now.
From the health point of view, well, first we must thank God our weathers are not as extreme, like too cold when you travel to Europe or Canada, or too hot when you go to the Middle East. But indeed, we do have fluctuations of weather. You can cover yourself properly in the cold weather. Dress to the weather. It's important that you can access online sources of weather forecast, which I have found very interestingly useful, that you can forecast the weather, temperatures, raining for the day, or other weather patterns for the day. But you should be well prepared to go out. I don't think it's a nice idea to run around under the rain. That can lead to problems health-wise, in terms of, especially for sickle cell anemic patients, people with respiratory compromise. So overall, you should be well kitted for the weather. Thick clothing for cold weather, light clothing for hot weather, and then well covered to a large extent.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abo, for coming on Health Options.
It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to more engagements.
Thank you, and hope this advice helps you get over the weather.
This is our very popular scent leaf. Scent leaf has so many uses. Combining it with a number of these boosts the immune system beyond human imagination. Dry, as usual, either with the seeds, without the seeds. Once it's dried, made into powder, combined with any of these could boost the immune system. Even with Moringa oleifera. This is a tree of life, truly. It has immune boosting property. It contains even the leaf has up to 124 milligrams of vitamin C, the same range with orange. And vitamin C, when it's concentrated, it becomes an antibiotic. And nowadays, you can see resistance with antibiotics. So if you have natural antibiotics from this, the sky is the limit. Very, very effective. They have not been corrupted, like the ampiclos, amoxil, the ciprotab, and all that. So they still maintain. And in my own case, I take them together with the back, because the back contains the higher levels of the chemicals in the case. And then the egg, time-honored egg, the kind of protein it has the best proteins, egg. Well, we make use of the yolk for people that are suffering from sickle cell. The yolk, we make use of it. But the entire egg with the back is very, very good in boosting the immune system. This you can easily break, dry it, either in soya beans or in red corn. Dry it, and the powder will give you this effect. This is the common egg people may look down on, but it's very, very powerful. However, you are not required to overconsume the eggs. Just one per day is good enough, please. Then the broccoli group. Today I have made use of my broccoli, so I couldn't bring it here. Broccoli, cabbage white, cabbage red. You guess it? Cauliflower. They are immune boosting property of these three, including broccoli, is beyond human imagination. They boost the immune system of HIV patients. As a matter of fact, you are on all this concentrated form. You don't fall ill. People that have very strong immune system hardly fall ill. The time-honored beetroot. Time-honored beetroot. This beetroot, taken in the morning by way of tea or dried powder, has a lot of nitrate. A smoothie in any form, that we have confirmed, is very, very effective in all situations. People that are having dysfunctional erection issues, it has a lot of nitrate. The nitrate will dilate the blood vessels. Even people that are having stroke, because the issue of stroke is that blood is not flowing well through the human system. Once you take this that has a lot of nitrate, it will expand and open all the capillaries, the arteries, the arterioles all over the human system. The next thing you get erection, because blood flows freely to the terminal end, which is the penile system. And then the general wellness of the person that is involved, because there's no blockage anywhere again. So hitherto, the hand that is not functioning because of stroke will come alive, because blood is going there. Blood is the issue. So once blood circulation is blocked, there's a big problem. Then our time-honored apple, 1 apple a day prevents you from going to the hospital. The same is true for this. The apple, they are very good in diabetics. And diabetics is part of hormonal imbalance. And hormonal imbalance is in issues of HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and all the rest of them. So the importance of apple cannot be overemphasized. And if there are different colors, their effects are different. So when you combine them, you have the maximum effect. For further professional advice and counseling, I can be reached on 080 37 899 735.
Now, Nature's Corner concludes this week's episode of the program. But if you miss any part of this, no worries, as you can always catch up on these and previous episodes of the program at www.nta.gov.ng. We also look forward to your questions, comments, and suggestions. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.